corruption. But according to reports, the public integrity section has now been decimated, and the FBI's public corruption squad has been dismantled. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad. I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, Senator Warren and I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing your decision to effectively legalize corruption and to politicize prosecutorial decisions. And he asks unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond as soon as I can.
You will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate the FBI and the tone since you've been there. We heard the ranking member, however, describe here the FBI under your leadership as being resorting to political enforcement and you personally as being paranoid. I would just suggest that perhaps that is of the ranking member himself and not you, sir. I want to
December 26th.
Of the ranking member himself.
And refer to prosecution every single time the evidence.
I want to.
Thank you, sir. One final area. I do want to draw attention, Mr. Patel, to Waxhaw, North Carolina, a town in my district that just fell victim to a cyber attack on September 12th that interrupted emergency services. Waxhaw is working with state partners, and the FBI has been notified on this attack, and I certainly pray they're able to help out with the ongoing investigation. Could you just speak to what the FBI is doing to bolster our community's cybersecurity to defend against any future cyber attacks?
Well, in North Carolina, you're slated to get a plus-up of 22 FBI employees, and they're already on the way. And that encompasses cyber, counter-intel, counterterrorism, field agents, intel operatives. And what we're doing on a macro level on the counterintelligence and cyber front is going people that fund these operations on these online platforms and breaking their banks. Because once we do that successfully across the board, they won't have the ability to attack us.
Well, thank you, Director Patel, and let me just add my comments to those of my colleagues that are very grateful for your leadership, grateful for your courage, your consistency, and for being willing to stand in the gap for us. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director Patel, thank you for being here with us today. Over the past few years, we have seen a disturbing increase of attacks on Christians. Since the leak of the Dobbs decision, there have been 354 attacks on Catholic churches. In the first year following the leak, there were more than 100 attacks against pro-life pregnancy care centers, and the shadowy pro-abortion group Jane's Revenge claimed responsibility for 24 of these attacks. Meanwhile, the Biden FBI focused resources on attacking Catholics and peaceful pro-life protesters like Mark Houck and Paul Vaughn. Many of these attacks on Christians and conservatives were coordinated or praised by dark leftist cells who lurk on the online chat rooms of Reddit, Discord, and game sites. This is a war room for Antifa and violent transgender activists. There have been essentially no incidents of violence by Catholics, pro-lifers, or parents at school board meetings, but there have unfortunately been multiple shootings motivated by leftist and transgender ideology, including recent attacks in Nashville, Colorado Springs, Denver, and Aberdeen. Worse, the targeted violence reached a boiling point this past month. A few weeks ago, an anti-Christian transgender terrorist murdered 2 children and injured 17 in a shooting at a Catholic mass. And last week, while we were sitting in this committee room almost to the hour, Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a 22-year-old who appears to have been motivated by leftist and transgender ideology. As you confirmed yesterday to my Senate colleagues, he may not have acted alone, and he testified that in his online chat room, of more than 20 trans ideologues that you were aware. I believe you said many more. Many were aware of and possibly complicit in the assassination. Director Patel, in light of the increased violence emanating from the far left, is your FBI investigating the anti-religious, Antifa, and transgender-driven violence?
All of it across the board is being zealously investigated, no matter what your motivation or bias is behind it.
We've also noticed a dramatic surge of the number of clinics offering so-called gender-affirming care. Whistleblowers in a recent NIH study confirmed that these clinics prey on some of the most mentally ill children and young adults in our society, and these clinics are quick to prescribe life-altering puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery. And often these patients get worse rather than better, and unfortunately, some have become violent, some have even committed mass shootings. And the partner of one of them assassinated Charlie Kirk. Director Patel, is the FBI looking into the role that these gender clinics may have in the recent attacks in making these mentally ill individuals violent?
We're looking at the entire spider web for any of these attacks, be it Denver or Charlie or where have you, and that's why our investigations are ongoing. We don't have a final product yet.
One of my Democrat colleagues, as an aside, mentioned, quote, the federal takeover of our cities. And I don't know whether my Democrat colleagues, for some reason, Washington, D.C. better when it was more dangerous and more violent, when there were more robberies and carjackings and murders and rapes. But what has the crime picture in Washington, D.C. looked like since the so-called federal takeover?
2,100 arrests, 37% decrease in violent crime, same time last year, 60% decrease in gun crime, 74% decrease in carjackings, and 50% reduction in homicides in Washington, D.C. in the last month. 2,100 arrests, 37% decrease in violent crime, same time last year, 60%.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I know it's been a long day. I yield back the rest of my time.
Gentleman yield.
Very good. Yes, and yes.
Director Patel, what's a 302?
Thank you so much for your testimony. I know
It's a report, the number of the report, whenever an FBI agent goes out and interviews someone.
And are you familiar with the 302 where the FBI agent interviewed the whistleblower?
It's a
Who's come forward and talked about the former chair of the Intel Committee here in the House pushing staff members to where the FBI classified information. Well, I'll read from it. Staffers were instructed to use, this is from the 302, interview this person. Staffers were instructed to use any sources that had developed within the United States intelligence community to gather information, which would then be made public through the media in order to compel public opinion. Yeah, and that's how they played the game, wasn't it? Leaking information, classified or otherwise, true or otherwise, to create this public compel action to undermine the press. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
Just one other point I would make from this. This witness also said in the 302 that the agent recorded that the witness provided the interviewing agents with copies of both his handwritten notes and the witness also said he gave them the stuff he wrote and at the actual time this was taking place. That's all in the 302, right?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit for the record an article from The Hill, Massive Crime Drop in D.C., City Sees Zero Murder Week, dated August 25th, 2025. And I'd also like to submit for the record an article from the New York Times, dated April 18th, 2025. Man who set fire on Shapiro's mansion cited treatment of Palestinians, police say.
Yeah. Thank you. Without objection. Gentlelady from Texas and then Pennsylvania.
Thank you so much. First you see is a letter to Congress on summary terminations where it states denying fundamental due process and summarily dismissing special agents will only make it harder to protect our nation. These actions distract agents from their work, foster fear, could cost them their careers either now or under the next administration, and increase the risk of criminal and national security threats by undermining unity and morale within the Bureau. The next one is a CNN article. FBI agents are again pulled from their day jobs to address a Trump priority. It states, morale is the worst I've seen, said one law enforcement source. The Bureau is becoming unrecognizable. Lots of people are weighing really. Morale is the worst I've seen, said one law
Lady from
enforcement
Pennsylvania.
source.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I request unanimous consent to introduce into the record a September 16th, 2025 article in the New Republic, Intimidate study on politics of domestic terrorists. The Justice Department has taken down a study that proves Republicans' entire narrative wrong about left-wing violence.
Objection.
The Justice Department has taken down
Gentleman from Washington.
entire narrative of violence.
And thank you, Director, for being here. I think without question, we can say that Donald Trump has been tougher on crime and tougher on prison than any president in American history. I imagine that brings you a lot of satisfaction and pride as Director of America's foremost law enforcement agency. Recently, President Trump conducted very strategic and important strikes on Iran's nuclear apparatus in that country. We also know that there are concerns of significant Iranian sleeper terrorist cells here in the U.S., perhaps exacerbated by the open border during the Biden administration. What can you tell Congress and the American people about what the FBI is doing to safeguard us from potential terrorist attack by Iranian cells?
So our counterterrorism division, which is fully stocked up in the intelligence streams that our intelligence community collects and produces, and works hand in glove with our partners at the CIA and elsewhere to make sure that any threat, even if it's hearsay, double hearsay, triple hearsay, or totally incredible, is not only fully run down, but we also take our duties to notify and give defensive briefings to those who are mentioned in those intelligence reports to make sure that we do both our notification obligation and our investigatory obligation.
Thank you. It's also the foremost counterintelligence apparatus here in the U.S. We know the U.S. faces a more complex threat of global more complex array of global threats than any time perhaps World War II or even superseding that time. As America continues to be under attack from various intelligence agencies globally, what can you tell us about the counterintelligence operations of the FBI as a core function?
This is why the CIA mission is so important to the FBI. Because, as you said, no one else can do it. No one else has the authorities to do it. And even if they did, they don't have the capabilities to do it. And the CIA mission has to be dismantling and disruption of networks, but a public display of how we're doing it so the world knows that our adversary is A, attacking us, and B, we're stopping them. And that's why you've seen these dramatic increases in counterintelligence arrests in the PRC by 33%, in Russia 83%, in Iran 60%. We are showing the world that they are trying to engage in espionage activities against us, and we are holding them accountable publicly.
And there's been increasing concern about the Maduro regime, both their potential support of terrorist activity, criminal drug networks, and potential espionage entities here within the U.S. What can you tell us about your activity regarding the Maduro regime of Venezuela?
Generally speaking, one of the largest shipment points for narcotics out of South America, Colombia, obviously, and also Venezuela, is being utilized heavily by the narco traffickers to send up cocaine, meth, and other fentanyl, and all the other illegal narcotics through the island chains in the Caribbean Ocean and ultimately for America. So there has to be more work done to stop those navigable waterways from being traversed with drugs bound for America.
And finally, Mr. Director, what is the one thing that Congress could most do in terms of passing a law to best support the FBI in making America safer and more secure?
Get us more authorities to get online to get onto social media companies, gaming platforms, have legal access, and also have private partnerships with the FBI of those companies and allow them to report into us on a daily basis. There is no human being or AI system on Earth that can go out there and cover down on the threat in those theaters. And so we need the assistance, and we need more authorities, and we need the private sector to double down.
Well, thank you very much for all you're doing, all the men and women of the FBI are doing to keep us safe, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Got a UC request from the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an article titled, FBI Flooded with Record Number of New Agent Applications. Cash Patel's first month. The FBI saw 5,577 new agent applications in March and more than 10,000 since January.
Without objection. The gentleman from Kansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Director, thank you for being here. I have listened carefully to all the discussion in this hearing. I've reached lying conclusions. First, I am glad I don't have your job. And second, I am glad you do. Thank you for being willing to step up and serve in this role. I'd like to plow a little bit of ground that we've not spent a lot of time to explore. You mentioned, and I'm well aware of your strong commitment to partnering with state and local law enforcement authorities. Obviously, one of the missions is in the counter-drug space. Another is in the forensic laboratory space, where both you and a lot of local and state agencies cooperate in terms of evidence analysis. From the state side, programs such as the HIDA programs, very, very important in counter-drug, such as the Coverdell grants, very, very important in maintaining state laboratory capacities. Would I be correct in concluding that if we are able to maintain robust funding for those types of programs, including both Coverdell and HIDA, that would contribute to the safety of the United States and to your mission?
Absolutely.
Director, you have talked a little bit about some of the counter-drug work that you've been doing. One thing we haven't talked about yet, the President, in one of his first actions upon taking office back in January, designated a number of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That's not just a paper transaction. I believe the list has been expanded since those first actions. In terms of America's military engagement with the cartels abroad, in terms of our intelligence engagement abroad, that designation has had real meaning and has affected some of the thinking and approaches of our military and our intelligence community. Can you talk a bit about how that designation might be affecting the FBI's approach to dealing with the domestic activities of the cartels?
The simple way to analogize it is after 9/11, and the manhunt for the foreign terrorist organizations overseas in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, the FBI received certain authorities to go out there and dedicate a mission to go after them both lawfully and investigatorially and collect evidence and provide it to our agent or agency partners. Once the foreign terrorist organization designation was labeled over to the Mexican drug cartels, we can now do that here. And in Mexico, and in Colombia, and in Venezuela, and anywhere else they are. And so that's the best analogy I have. What we're able to do is take our counterterrorism platform, traditionally used for global terrorist manhunting, and bring it into this hemisphere against a very real threat, which is the drug traffickers, and they are foreign terrorist organizations. So we just have so many more resources and authorities now directed at them.
So, for example, Director, in the regions, from the vantage point of local law enforcement, there are structures that have historically handled those partnerships separately. On the drug trafficking side, the JTTFs are an example. On the terrorism side, how is the thinking evolving in terms of on a regional basis, either merging or not merging those structures now that the targets in many ways are merged?
So the JTTFs are kind of our forward operating base across every single state in this country to take on that mission. And anytime you're labeled a foreign terrorist organization, you come right under the authorities of the JTTF, the task force officers on the state and local level, police work that gets done in those JTTFs. Homeland Security Task Force layer on top of that, I think 25 or 30 across the country, specifically working with DHS, to go after the drug trafficking foreign terrorist organizations because they have unique capabilities and authorities dedicated to that mission. And so that's the beauty of the HSTFs.
Let me ask a question, Director. I noticed in your written testimony, I don't think we've talked about it yet, you brought to our attention an expiring authority. It's in 6 U.S.C. 124N with respect to counter-UAS drones. You point out that authority expires in statute at the end of this month, and you impressed upon us your interest in seeing it extended in some manner. Can you talk a little bit about the FBI's role in counter-UAS work over American airspace. I represent a district that's going to host some of the FIFA World Cup activities coming up. We're obviously very interested in security, and there are limits on what our state and local authorities have the capacity to do or what our military has the capacity to do once the threat is domestic.
So it's critically important. Both the FBI and DHS have those capabilities. I'll speak to the FBI, of course, only. And you raised the World Cup, and that's exactly what we need it for. The Club World Cup, which just happened, was 32 games in at least a dozen different cities across the country, the largest sporting events consecutively in American history. And we used our counter-drone capabilities to not only inspect and secure stadium locations, but where fans were hovering and we call base camps. And thankfully, because of the success of the FBI and DHS, we had no significant security incidences. And flipping to the World Cup, which is going to be 3 times as large, and obviously the largest we've ever had, and blending into the LA Olympics in 28, our counter-UAS capabilities are going to be the ones that are able us to have literal birds-eye threat dynamic around so many of these cities, which are going to see literally tens and hundreds of thousands of people flock to them. So we have to have it.
And making sure the bad guys don't have it.
Exactly.
I yield back and thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Director, you've been amazing. You've been here 4 hours and 41 minutes without a break. We appreciate that. I think we have one more member. A few UC requests, and then you can we'll let you go. But we appreciate that. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you again for taking the time, Director Patel, and Chairman Jordan for holding this hearing. Thank you for depoliticizing the FBI and getting it back to its original mission as well. Director Patel, do you agree that we have a problem in the United States with politically motivated violence?
Absolutely.
And I very much agree. I think we can all agree that political violence is wrong, it's evil, regardless of which side it comes from, and that we can all adamantly and vehemently reject it, or we certainly should. But one of the things that we've noticed recently is that affinity and tolerance for political violence is not equally distributed on both sides of the aisle. In fact, right now, social media is filled with leftists who are cheering on the murder of an iconic conservative political figure, Charlie Kirk. And it's not just random people on Twitter doing this now. There's a YouGov poll released just a few days ago, which stated that 25% of those who identify as very liberal believe that political violence can sometimes be justified. That's far too many, is it not? It is.
One is far too many.
One is far too many. That's right. Only 3% of very conservatives said the same thing, and we can agree that 3% is far too many. But there's an astounding difference between 25% on the left accepting and tolerating political violence and 3% on the right. I would hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would also recognize that there is a systemic problem on their side of the aisle with tolerance for violence against people with whom they politically disagree, that there is a cultural rot on their side of the aisle that needs to be addressed desperately. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
One of the more astounding this is that it's not just people. This comes from the very top, from their political leaders. Just a few days ago, a member of Congress of this body, Ilhan Omar, shared a video on her social media account about Charlie Kirk's murder, and I'll quote what it said. It said, "Charlie Kirk was Dr. Frankenstein, and his monster shot him through the neck." In other words, Charlie had it coming to him. The words that he said naturally led to his assassination. And that is a reprehensible thing for a member of Congress to say, to suggest, to promote in any capacity. And there are people across this country who are losing their jobs for far less than this. And that, by the way, is a just response to acceptance and tolerance of political violence. It's amazing to me that the political left today, who were the originators and the cheerleaders of cancel culture, now have the backbone to attack conservatives for defending their assassinated friend. But there's a key difference here. Silence conservatives for speaking obvious, self-evident, ontological truths like that men aren't women and men can't get pregnant. That seems pretty basic. That seems like a basic truth that we should all be able to agree on. Republicans, by contrast, are recognizing that a constitutional republic depends on the free and open exchange of ideas that we can debate without violence, and that assassinating a political rival is evil, it's wrong, and it should not be glorified or promoted or justified in any way, including in the way that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar did. Mr. Patel, thank you again for being here. I'd like to, with the remainder of my time, just get your opinion. Does the FBI recognize the rising threat of political violence in America, and what can you guys do?
Yes, we do, and what we can do to address it, Congressman, is we need to get online partnerships with these companies in the public space, on these gaming sites, and on these social media sites. As I was saying earlier, there is no way to triage the amount of information generated on these sites by the FBI alone. And we need the public-private partnership. And there's another law that's expiring, I think, at the end of this month, which I believe we need renewed, that allows private sector companies to report into the FBI without liability for criminal investigatory purposes. And that's the kind of stuff we need to keep going.
Got it. Thank you, Director Patel. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Director, I want to thank you again for being here. While we're waiting for members to get back to record their vote, you don't need to stay around for these kind of motions. We appreciate the service you're providing the country, appreciate your testimony today, and appreciate the fact that you did it 5 hours straight. That's amazing. So God bless you and keep up the good work. The witness is dismissed. Committee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to claim. We welcome everyone to today's hearing on oversight of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is the first occasion for the committee to get back together since the tragic death of Charlie Kirk. Charlie was a good man, a happy warrior who fought for principles and values I think make our country special, and certainly was a strong proponent of defending the First Amendment, something this committee cares deeply about. I said this over the weekend. I think Charlie lived that scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7, fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. Charlie certainly lived that, and he did it with a smile on his face. And so the tragic killing happened a week ago while we were in the committee. And I know everyone, I know our witness was a friend of Charlie's, and I know many people in the dais were as well. So I know we're all praying for Charlie's family. And I would extend a moment to the ranking member if you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for saying that. The whole country reacted with horror and shock to the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk in cold blood. And there any warrant for political violence in America. And just as we all recoiled together at the shocking assassination of and others who died in that Minnesota attack, we all stand together categorically against political violence in America and determined to end these cycles of political violence that have traumatized the country.
Also, Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Schmidt, to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Feeling clear. You're 20 out of College Station. Valid.
10-4, just when I get into Staples.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As is customary, we will begin with opening statements. 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. With experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump. Now, the former chairman wasn't the only person leaking information. Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California, to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647. Jim Comey told us. Just how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the Intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term? 7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was 22nd. It says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this: it is essential that we be on the same page, and all of us are supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, that's our story, and we're sticking to it. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. Compromise on normal modalities, that's a fancy way of saying, that's the government speak for we're going to have to change the rules. In fact, we're not going to follow our own rules. And that's exactly what they did, to get the objective they wanted, to undermine President Trump. Now, how did it specifically take place? The whistleblower said that the government officials ignored concerns about discredited information. What was that discredited information? What was the discredited information that they didn't ignore the concerns about? What did they use? Of course, it was the dossier. The now famous Steele dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign when they hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired the foreigner, Christopher Steele, who wrote all this garbage and lies down. That is what was used to change the intelligence community report. And what happens next? What do Jim, John, and Jim do next? They go to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017 to brief then President-elect Trump about the dossier. Again, the Clinton-financed, foreign-authored dossier that the whistleblower knows is garbage and that they know is garbage. And then one final step. Jim Comey leaves that meeting with the president and immediately leaks to the press that they briefed the president on the discredited information. They briefed the president on the dossier and thereby giving it some credibility and creating the basis and the predicate for all they did to the president. They leaked false information, they leaked classified information, they used and leaked discredited information, and they didn't follow their own rules, all to sabotage President Trump's first term. And but for this guy, Kash Patel, but for this guy, we would never have known this information. The good people of this great country would not have known what took place 8 years ago when they were trying to undermine the guy elected by we the people. Putting bad guys behind bars. 21,000 violent criminals have been taken off the streets, which is a 125% increase from the comparable period in the previous administration. He's rescued 4,000 kids. He's got 1,300 predators who he's arrested. He's also ended the weaponization of the FBI. No more spying on parents at school board meetings. No more pre-dawn raids on pro-life Catholics. No more retaliation against whistleblowers. And he's given us information that Chris Wray didn't. Maybe said better, he's given us information that Chris Wray wouldn't.
They're in front of Tracy
Director Wray didn't tell us that there were 26 confidential human sources at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, even though he was repeatedly asked about that by members of this committee. Director Wray didn't tell us that there were 17 of those restricted space 4 went in the Capitol. None of them were arrested. They weren't authorized to do that. They broke the law. None of them were arrested. Lots of American citizens were arrested, but the guys whose whose American tax dollars was used to pay these guys who broke the law, none of them were, one was recommended for charging and was not charged. And remember when Chris Wray told us that the Richmond field office memorandum on pro-life Catholics was just a one-off? Turns out he wasn't being square with us then either. Director Wray wasn't square with us. He told us that multiple other offices were involved in targeting the Catholics. We got that information from Director Patel. We learned from Director Patel the FBI actually surveilled a priest, tried to get the priest to divulge information, break the priest-penitent relationship and confidence that exists. And Director Patel is saving taxpayers' money. He's not going to build a new headquarters outside of D.C. He's going to keep the headquarters right here in the capital city. Save Americans money. Save the taxpayers' money. In 8 months, Director Patel has given us the facts. He's ended the weaponization at the FBI. He's taken bad guys off the streets, and he's saving taxpayers money. But my guess is the Democrats won't focus on all that good news. They'll focus on politics. They'll stick with Comey and Clapper and Brennan and continue to try to undermine President Trump. With that, I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Director Patel. You and I have not had the opportunity to meet, and alas, you failed to respond to the 8 oversight letters I've sent you over the last 7 months. So we do have a lot of questions piling up for you, but I want to start with a word of praise. The first FBI director was J. Edgar Hoover, who steadfastly refused to hire women, African Americans, and other minorities as agents. And although he was a closeted homosexual who lived in domestic partnership for decades with Clyde Tolson, he also participated in anti-gay crusades. He aggressively promoted what we would today call white Christian nationalism, and he would undoubtedly be turning over in his grave to see as one of his successors a first-generation Indian American and a proud Hindu. So I congratulate you on being a breakthrough in this sense and being a beneficiary of the civil rights movement that opened up the FBI and the federal workforce to lots of people who never would have been hired in its first decades. Alas, you share J. Edgar Hoover's dangerous obsession with blind loyalty over professionalism and effective public policy. For Hoover, it was blind loyalty to him in keeping his secrets. For you, it's blind loyalty to Donald Trump's. During your confirmation, it was widely noted on all sides that your primary qualification was your unwavering loyalty to Trump. Unlike other directors, you had no work experience at the FBI, but you had made over 1,000 media and political appearances in support of Trump's campaign. Your Senate confirmation vote was 51-49, the closest in history, with your opponents warning you were not qualified and had no interest in actually developing the qualifications for the job. I hoped that they were wrong. Alas, they were not. While most other new FBI directors drew on their experience as FBI agents, you didn't have that. But you did write a picture book trilogy, children ages 5 and up, based on your experience clashing with President Trump's political enemies. In your book, you describe your literary alter ego, Cash the Knight, as a wacky, easily bored wizard carrying out King Donald's vengeance by driving his enemies out of the kingdom. In the books, King Donald is besieged by the evil Hillary Queentown, but saved in the end by Cash. Then Cash goes on to catch mules who are stealing the 2020 election for the great King Donald from Sleepy Joe. And then in the third book, Cash takes down the Dragon of the Jalapenos, nicknamed the DOJ. Your supporters had hoped that you would graduate from imagining yourself a romantic fairy tale knight to actually running America's premier federal law enforcement agency. Alas, just as we've learned how dangerous it is to put a science-denying anti-vaxxer in charge of our public health. We've learned how dangerous it is to name as director of the FBI a man who thinks of himself as a fairy tale knight who keeps a fire-breathing dragon named DOJ at home to forcibly drive villains out of the kingdom. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, while his killer was still on the loose, you decided you didn't need to be at FBI headquarters in Washington to work with your team while the chaotic manhunt unfolded. You spent your evening dining in a swanky Midtown Manhattan restaurant and tweeting out false information that the subject of the shooting was in custody, a statement you had to retract 1 hour later. Your performance was so disturbing that even the MAGA base was alarmed. Culture warrior Christopher Rufo, who just a few months ago sat in your chair as a Republican witness, observed that you performed terribly, and he called for your ouster. The FBI might be able to survive your delusions of grandeur and the explosively volatile temper that was on display yesterday in the Senate, but the intractable problem is that you are running the FBI not as a law enforcement agency charged with keeping the American people safe, but as a political enforcement agency working directly for the president's vengeance campaign. 7 months in, it's impossible to overstate the destruction, chaos, and demoralization you've brought to the FBI and its workforce and the resulting danger your actions have caused to our country. You've been systematically purging the FBI of its most experience committed by the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and beat the hell out of more than 140 police officers, or simply because you suspected them of being insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. You illegally sacked Brian Driscoll, the former acting director of the Bureau and a decorated counterterrorism expert who worked at the FBI for nearly 20 years. According to Driscoll, you told him your own job, quote, depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, regardless of whether the agents chose to work on those cases or not. You added, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. You forced out the leader of the Salt Lake City field office, Mehtab Saeed, just weeks before Charlie Kirk's assassination, depriving the FBI of an experienced counterterrorism expert described by her colleagues as absolutely the best and legendary. She would have led the FBI's manhunt had she not been fired. That rounding up immigrants with no criminal records was more important than preventing crimes like human trafficking of women and girls, drug dealing, terrorism, and fraud. You ordered the 25 largest field offices to divert thousands of agents away from chasing down violent criminals, sex traffickers, fraudsters, and scammers to carry out this immigration crackdown. Director Patel, you treated the men and women at FBI with disrespect and paranoia. You've assembled a roving band of freelancing henchmen within your office and charged them with conducting unauthorized investigations, targeting and harassing career FBI employees. Amazingly, you forced senior leadership to repeatedly take polygraph tests to prove their political loyalty and pushed out leaders who refused these demeaning exercises. And now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI. The Epstein files. You want an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims, betraying all of the survivors of the sexual violence. Before you got in this job, you called for full release of the Epstein files, telling podcaster Benny Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. In your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. And anyone from the prior or current Bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. Spring, you ordered hundreds of agents to pore over all the Epstein files, but not to look for more clues about the money network or the network of human traffickers. You pulled these agents from their regular counterterrorism or drug trafficking duties to work around the clock, some of them sleeping at their desks, to conduct a frantic search to make sure Donald Trump's name and image were flagged and redacted wherever they appeared, whether an email, a text, a letter, an interview, a photograph, or a video. In May, Attorney General Bondi reportedly told Trump that his name had indeed appeared multiple times throughout the Epstein files, and not long thereafter, in July, you and the Attorney General released a memo claiming that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability and transparency for the Epstein files to being a part of the conspiracy and cover-up? You said it yourself, because of who's on that list. Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein over the years is well documented. A week ago, the Oversight Committee released Trump's disturbing birthday book, Note to Epstein, written over a drawing of a woman's naked body, referring to a, quote, wonderful secret. Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband in the attempted murder of Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who miraculously survived a combined 17 gunshots. We saw an arsonist set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence on fire. And of course, last week, we saw the horrific, cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah that has shaken the nation. 1 minute after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, a 16-year-old shooter in Evergreen, Colorado, radicalized by white supremacist ideology online, opened fire and critically wounded 2 other students at Evergreen High School. We've seen lethal anti-Semitic violence, including the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staffers just blocks from the Capitol, and then in support of hostages held in Gaza in Boulder in June. We've seen continued mass shootings at schools, like the domestic terror incident at a Catholic school in Minneapolis last month, which killed 2 children and wounded 18 others. And in August, a man fired more than 500 bullets at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, killing a police officer who was a Marine veteran and father. People like Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk should be able to participate in politics as elected officials or active citizens without being shot down in cold blood in the United States of America. People should also be able to go to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to work, to the mall, and to church without being shot down in explosions of gun violence. A certain position at the FBI requires a leader who puts public safety and national security and the rule of law first. I'm afraid, Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe you've used the powers of the FBI to serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI, and as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That opening statement may have been longer than any book director's ever written or anyone else has written. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Mr. Patel has been the director of the FBI since February of 2025. He previously served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense, deputy director of national intelligence with the National Security Council, and also as a congressional staffer, as a federal prosecutor, where he focused on national security cases. And he also worked as a public defender in the state of Florida. We welcome our witness, appreciate his work, and thank him for appearing here today. We will begin by swearing you in, Director. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. You can be seated as you are. You know, you've been through this. You've been through this, yes? Did a fine job. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Director, you may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. I want to begin today by discussing the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigation, so a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated on September 10th. We immediately, the next day, released images early in the day at local time in Utah to start the public partnership in the manhunt for the assassin and culprits. At approximately 5 p.m. local time, I arrived on the ground to walk the crime scene myself, and we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist state and local law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspect on the grounds. We also released enhanced images. Due to that release that I directed and ordered, the suspect involved was apprehended and in custody at 10 p.m. local time. That's less than 2 hours after we did the video release and the photo release. So within 33 hours, that individual suspect was in custody. And his family, who has since been interrogated, specifically stated to FBI interrogators that because of the video that the FBI released at my direction and because of the photographs that they released, they identified their son, they confronted, and that's what led to his apprehension. We are still, the FBI has that investigation ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing. And I want to thank the state of Utah and the state and local authorities there. And I also want to thank the Attorney General and President Trump for directing resources to allow us to conduct that investigation as we have. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals, 23,000 in 7 months. That's twice as many year-to-date last year. We've taken over 6,000 firearms off the streets. 6,000 guns are no longer in the hands of criminals in 7 months. We've identified and found and located 4,100 child victims. That is a 35% increase year-to-date last year. We have arrested 1,500 child predators. That is a 10% increase year-to-date last year in just 7 months. We've assisted our partners with countless counterterrorism operations around the world. At the FBI, 4 of the most top 10 wanted fugitives in the world in 7 months. To put that in perspective, that's as many as my predecessor nabbed in the entirety of the Biden administration. We got 4, we got more coming. On top of that, in 2 weeks, thanks to the help of the CIA, we collected and captured one of the individuals responsible for the horrific Abbey Gate bombing that led to the murder of 13 service members. We did that in 2 weeks. They didn't do it in the 4 years of the entire prior administration. Nationwide, we've been executing our Operation Summer Heat, the FBI's national focus on targeting violent crime based on intelligence-driven operations. Ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, New Orleans. To specifically highlight New Orleans and Nashville, there has been a 250% increase in violent crime arrests in those cities alone and other mid-major cities that I've just listed. In just a few short months, we have already unleashed FBI personnel across this country. Every single state across this country is getting a plus-up. This is a fiction that the FBI is short or that we are on track to produce the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history by double digits. Those are results not of mine. Those are results of the men and women of the FBI. If you want to criticize me, bring it on, but do not attack the brave leaders in the field. We are also working 24/7, 365 on the opioid epidemic that is killing more than hundreds of thousands of people a year. We have seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets so far in 7 months. Year-to-date, 25% increase. To put that in perspective, that's enough to kill a third of the American population, 120 million Americans. 100,000 kilograms of cocaine and meth gone off the streets. Ingredients that produce and make fentanyl that kill our children, and we're going to keep going. Counterterrorism work, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries are something the FBI must never sleep on, and we are not sleeping. In the counterintelligence space alone, this year to date, 30% increase in counterintelligence arrests from the DPRK, Russia, Iran, and China. And I want the American people to know, in this setting, there's a lot of work that the brave men and women in the FBI are doing we just can't get into, but they don't stop. Our cyber threats, ransomware attacks, those harming our children online. We have nearly a 20% increase in indictments and arrests in 7 months alone this year. We're going after those that harm our malware, infrastructure systems, telecom systems, and energy structure. Combating SALT and Vault typhoons are just a little bit of the examples we're doing. Maybe most importantly, under the counterterrorism and domestic terrorism umbrella, are nihilist, violent extremists, and those that label themselves 764, who wish to go online and convince children to maim and mutilate themselves and commit suicide, producing record numbers of arrests under that umbrella organization. We even stopped an individual in the 764 network who wanted to conspire to kill an adolescent girl. He is now in custody. Transparency remains priorities at the FBI, and this is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct. To put the 33,000 in perspective, my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total to the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in 7 years to this Congress and will continue to do so. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust in the mission and the integrity of the FBI, and we cannot do so without congressional oversight, and I promise you I will continue to do so. On the Epstein case, the original sin on the Epstein case was how it was handled by Mr. Acosta when he first brought the case in 2006, 7, and 8. The original case had a very limited search warrant, had a very limited search window, had a very limited investigative window. I was not there when those search warrants and that investigation was launched. I would not have done it that way. They were limited to only 3 to 4 years of investigations from 97 to approximately 2001 and 2002 to 2005. Mr. Acosta allowed Mr. Epstein to enter into a plea agreement where he served weekend jails for trafficking their women. He also was allowed to leave jail to go home on the weekends. Plus, he allowed a non-prosecution agreement to be signed as part of that plea deal, prohibiting future investigations from that prosecution and from that evidence, and prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times. Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight. And I'd lastly like to focus on operation that the president led in D.C. Because of this, we are taking this fight in D.C. to every single city across the country. 2,100 arrests in the last month alone. D.C. has seen a 60% decrease in gun crimes, 75% decrease in carjackings, and 53% decrease in homicides in our nation's capital, and rightly so. We're bringing that fight to the streets of America. I want to thank you for your support, and I'm proud to be the director that leads this FBI into a new headquarters building that they've needed for decades, saving the taxpayer $3.5 billion, and also providing our workforce a safe environment. If you don't know the calamity that is the Hoover Building, I invite each and every one of you to walk around and give you a tour myself, and you can see where the cement falls on the heads of our employees that have only been saved by netting, just to give you an example. Thank you for support to our mission, and I do want to highlight one thing about D.C. It's because the FBI gathered sources and evidence that we were able to, through our source network, identify the horrific murder of the D.C. and spoken to his family, and we are working to bring them justice. And Mr. Chairman, in my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service, if anyone has any questions about my service, bring it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Eisen.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of fresh air. As you outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor, roughly. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so how much of that has to do with taking people out of the backside of the FBI and moving them into the field, into doing the job for which we primarily pay the FBI?
That's exactly what we needed done. 1/3 of the FBI's national capital region before I got there. 1/3 of the crimes do not happen in Washington, D.C.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So 1,000 personnel of the FBI were deployed across this country on a permanent base. Union is getting a plus up, not a reduction, a plus up of 1811s of intel analysts and support staff. And that is why the crime rates are going down in record numbers.
Thank you for doing that, and it's perhaps the hardest thing for a bureaucrat to do is to lower the head count around them that support them, and I appreciate your willingness to do it. Different than your predecessor. A lot of what you covered earlier was the find, the discovery, prosecution that is done by the DOJ, but I want to talk a little bit about the prevent side.
On the Charlie assassination, sir?
No, on all of these. Okay, for example, and I'll bring it up before the Democrats bring it up, January 6th. January 6th, we now know, because of your find, that in fact there were people involved who were not just observers but participants who in fact, it's been alleged, and I personally believe, in fact, were part of promoting, perhaps even the one woman who died, encouraging her to walk through a door that led to her death. When you see that kind of activity, and you know it was done under predecessors with full knowledge, whether it's January 6th, where embedded people crossed the line, or any other activity, including, obviously, the Russian hoax that we're now dealing with up in center. My question to you is, what can you or others do to prevent it from occurring again? Not on your watch, but on future watches. How can we know that this won't happen again the moment you leave the FBI?
Simple. What I'm doing through our leadership cadre is having FBI agents do what they would do, not what they were not trained to do, not put them in situations that both harm them and the public. We're also utilizing our short networks and prioritizing the threat structure to go after the narco traffickers, the counterterrorism people, the counterintelligence threats, and the cyber threats. That's what they were trained to do, and that's what we're letting them do.
One major question I have, after decades of doing this, on our side of it, both the chairman, myself, and others, both at oversight and here, have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice hide behind non-statutory practices. Now, you've changed the interpretation of many of those practices. That's why we're getting the discovery that was previously withheld. How do we work together to make sure that we never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has a prohibition about giving, quote, you fill in the blank, that has led to the chairman not seeing anything until you took over?
Aggressive constitutional oversight. Having been a House congressional staffer, I know that is an important part of securing our democracy. And the way we make it an everlasting, enduring process is by showing the American people the results of what we are doing and the important work of this committee and putting it out to them so they can see government waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they can demand from our constituents and our electors that they want this process to continue.
Last major question here. Some things are so sensitive that we both would agree they cannot be made public. Will you commit to this committee, when it is too sensitive to disclose, that you would at least make it available for in-camera review by this, obviously along with the Attorney General? And I yield back my 4 seconds.
Thank you. The yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible, close quote. I would note for the record that Donald Trump has famously demonized practically every person he has ever disagreed with, and therefore, using his own logic, he has put their lives at risk. About 2 weeks ago, when I announced my decision not to seek re-election, many people on both sides of the aisle, including the chairman, offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took to Truth Social to call me a, quote, psychopathic nut job, among other things. Yesterday, I was filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimic some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day. We have seen political assaults on both the left and the right. The attack on Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of the president, the murder of the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House, the assault on Paul Pelosi, and the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for example. Director Patel, do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right?
There's too much political violence.
Do you agree, yes or no, that there's violence?
There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side.
From either side, okay. Are you aware of the study by the Cato Institute, a well-known conservative group, that found that 69, right?
I'm not familiar with that study.
You're not familiar, okay. I would commend it to you. Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Nobody at the FBI is doing that.
I didn't ask you about the FBI, I said the administration.
I speak for the FBI.
I would like to enter the record an article from today's New York Times titled, Trump invokes Kirk's killing in justifying measures to silence opponents. In the wake of Charlie Kirk, Trump and his allies have laid out a broad plan to target liberal groups, monitor speech, revoke visas, and designate certain groups as domestic terrorists. Ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record. Thank you. Politicizing the murder of Charlie King to go after free speech is not a legacy I believe Charlie King would have. Moving on, I want to address another topic. The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI may be abandoning its commitment to investigating public corruption. Since its creation in the wake of the Watergate scandal, the Public Integrity Section has been one of the crown jewels of the Department of Justice, investigating and prosecuting corruption among the nation's public officials and acting as a key safeguard against politicized prosecutions. It's been supported by an elite squad in the FBI devoted specifically to rooting out corruption. But according to reports, the Public Integrity Section has now been decimated, and the FBI's Public Corruption Squad has been disbanded. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, "FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad." I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing grave concern over your decision to effectively legalize corruption and to politicize prosecutorial decisions. And he asks unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond.
You will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate the change in the FBI and the tone since you've been there. We heard the ranking member, however, describe the FBI resorting to political enforcement and viewed personally as being paranoid. I would just suggest that perhaps that is the projections of the ranking member himself and not you, sir. I want to refer to something that was said yesterday in yesterday's hearing by Senator Grassley. He said, "It's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics." At your nomination hearing, he gave you records, made public records about whistleblowers regarding something called Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by anti-Trump FBI agent Thibault, and Arctic Frost became Jack Smith's elector case. The new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. In fact, Republican organizations. Some examples of the groups that the Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican attorneys, and Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups, Republican-linked individuals, were placed under the investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list for investigation was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. I'd ask that, Mr. Chairman, that document be administered.
Without objection.
So, I know that this may be under current investigation, but I wish to ask specific questions about this for just a moment. What search tools were used in Arctic Frost to view private communications of targets?
I believe the traditional search tools, search warrants, lawful service of process, and the has in our infrastructure systems, cybersecurity systems, and counterintelligence systems. But generally speaking, if I may, I want to use this to highlight the fact that I'm continuing my promise to work with Congress to produce documents simultaneously and also conduct ongoing investigations. I'm giving you as much as I can, and I'll give you more when I can.
Thank you. Another question regarding that is, were there any directives from the Biden White House concerning the Arctic Frost investigation?
Were there any
directives or communications from the Biden White House itself concerning the Arctic Frost investigation?
I'll just rely on what was turned over to date, sir.
Okay. So I want to add here, the search warrants that were used included the seizing of a U.S. member of Congress, his phone. I think we all know who that was and how that was taken away and used for political purposes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director. So we'll leave that for a second, and let's go over to the Charlie Kirk case for just a second. Let's emphasize this. How many hours did it take from the assassination to the arrest of the assassin, Mr. Director?
33.
That seems pretty swift, and it was because of the actual release of videos and photographs that you directed to be released, sir.
That's correct, and to put it in perspective, the Boston bomber took 5 days and Luigi Mangini took 5 days.
Was the platform Discord forthright from the start with law enforcement about the shooter's communications on its platform?
Discord, the platform ownership, has been working with our lawful process, and we are obtaining materials from them on a rolling basis.
Thank you. And I want to get back here to Article Frost for just a second, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the unclassified document from the FBI released to be
Objection.
and a document from the Economic Times also to be admitted to the
Objection.
So I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. We could go on about the Epstein case. I've got a bunch about that, but I'm just going to let you, if you wish to respond to either of the two vitriolic or statement from the Democrats.
The work of the FBI speaks for itself. It's on showcase here today. Anyone that wants to attack the FBI can attack me, but leave our leadership structure alone. When you have 23,000 violent felons arrested, twice as many as this time last year, the work speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Appreciate your good work, Director Patel. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, before you joined the FBI, you railed against Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking ring. Let me refresh your memory with this clip.
It has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
So you finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big, let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
And this is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black book?
black book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the black book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
The Rolodex, which is what everybody colloquially refers to as the black book, has been released.
Oh, no, you're talking about what the journalist got 5 years ago? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you were talking about there,
That's
the black
exactly
book
what I
under
was
the direct control of the FBI director.
We have released more material than anyone else before. The Biden administration, Obama administration had the exact opportunities to release this material, and they never did. And if you are selling the men and women of the FBI,
Why
we're not
have you
going after
changed your
child
position?
predators. Hang on, you said we're not going after child predators. 1,500 child predators arrested, this 5%
Okay,
increase.
I'll reclaim my time.
4,700 child victims
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
found.
reclaim my time if you could instruct the witness. Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI released. Why have you changed your
Everything
position?
that has been lawfully permitted to be released has been released. And as I told you, the investigation was limited. Let me make something crystal clear. I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic other people, other women, and they're not other victims. This is the investigation we were given from 2006, 7, and 8, and the search warrants from 2006, 7, and 8. That's what we're working with.
Well, wait, have you released all of the stuff that the FBI has seized from Epstein's house? The computers, the emails, the file cabinets, the documents? What about the financial records? Have you released all of that?
Everything the court has allowed us to
Which
release.
court are you talking about?
3 separate federal courts have come in and said.
We're talking about the evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any
We're talking
idea
about
how the
evidence-
law works?
Wait.
Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No, I want you to
satisfy
follow your own
curiosity?
word, Director Patel. You said up there it was under the direct control of the FBI director. He had the black book.
Everything
Have you
I
released.
On the court. You haven't.
Complete your
We went
sentence.
to court.
Everything you have direct control over, you said.
Have gone to court, and everything we have direct
Director
control
Patel,
over.
complete your
and
sentence.
can
You said everything-
lawfully
Like to co-
release.
the
We're
gentleman-
releasing.
He'd like to complete his answer.
You began the sentence, everything you have direct control over, and then you stopped that sentence. You've released everything that you have direct control over?
And I have direct control over and can lawfully release. If you're not familiar with the court order, fault.
Oh, I'm
go
perfectly,
look at them.
I'm
Go
perfectly
to
familiar
court.
with them, but how did we prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell?
She was prosecuted with the investigatory material that was collected from 2001 and 2005 because of the non-prosecution agreements and the court orders on the investigations and search warrants. We were not able to develop new information. And oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein was out for 12 years, and the Obama and Biden administration did nothing to look at his work, his pedophile network. If you want to blame me, that's fine. Now you're blaming the men and women who conducted
No,
this
stop
great
that.
search.
I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials
Has
under your
anyone
direct
released
control.
more information on Epstein than I have? Has
Well,
anyone?
much
Did
more-
Comey, did Ray?
Much
Did
more.
they?
Excuse me. Much more has come out in the days since the American people in Congress have been demanding it, but it's coming out in dribs and drabs. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you, there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to settle. You didn't join us when we filed court to release the court orders. You could have. You have lawyers. You could have shown up. You didn't do that.
That's a tiny fraction of the material we're
That
talking
is
about.
not.
It is
How
a
do you-
tiny fraction.
How do you know that? Have you seen
No.
everything?
It's all misdirection.
How do you know
Time
that?
of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, thank you. Mr. Director, just to be clear, how many of the Epstein files were released in the 4 years of the Biden administration?
Zero.
And how many have you released?
I don't have the number, but it's got to be thousands of pages of stuff.
To begin, whether Americans are safer today than they were 9 months ago, but you cited dramatic increases in criminal arrests since you've taken office, a dramatic decrease in crime that's resulted. Who would have thought that taking criminals off the streets would reduce the crime rate? But somehow we have stumbled upon that new truth. But it begs the question, what was the FBI doing during the 4 years of the Biden administration to see that dramatic an increase in work under your tenure?
The simple answer is I'm letting good cops be cops. We're working with our state and local law enforcement. We're energizing our partnerships. We're bringing on more task force officers. When you have more cops in the streets, when you're using ground-based intelligence, when you're not weaponizing law enforcement and focusing on DC and focusing on the rest of America, this is what happens. It is not a significant mind shift in terms of how we maneuver. Sir, attacking me for a decade, as is the fake news media. They didn't like the fact that I exposed the Russiagate host and the largest weaponization of the FBI, DOJ, and U.S. history. We proved it to be true with congressional oversight.
Terrorist threats that came in during the Biden years.
I think you're talking about, if you're not, let me know, known or suspected terrorists, and we've encountered almost zero at the southern border since the southern border has been sealed. But the problem that we are running into is our northern border. It's largely expansive. The enemy has adapted, and we need more focus on the northern border to stop known or suspected terrorists from coming in from places like China, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, Afghanistan.
And what can you tell us about the remaining threat posed by potential terrorist cells here in the United States?
The terrorist threat that continues to be posed by international terrorists here in the United States is one of my highest priorities. We are working through our intelligence to identify those individuals, and we've taken down numerous individuals in numerous rings across this country to neutralize that terrorist threat, including in places like New York City, Los Angeles, and I believe Dallas, Texas, most recently.
How extensively did criminal cartels like Sinaloa, Jalisco, New Generation, MS-13, Trinidad and others infiltrate our country during the Biden administration?
By the tens of thousands.
Well, and what progress have you been making in combating their presence?
I think the DHS is best to speak to that, but I think I can't remember the numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals they found that came in illegally, and the tens of thousands that associations to criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats on fighting violent crime like we're doing.
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic frost. What else can you tell us about that and what we need to do to assure that it never happens again?
Continue the congressional oversight work that you're doing on Arctic frost. Let me provide you with more documentation on Arctic frost and also call in witnesses from the paperwork that we have given you. You have that right. The American public deserves to hear what those people have to say. As for my ongoing investigation, there's not much I can say.
What role did the FBI play in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2024 election?
Off the top of my memory, sir, I believe the FBI was in possession of verified information from that laptop, and it was improperly publicized that they did not have information and masked it as Russian disinformation. Now know that was categorically false. I don't know why the FBI did that, when they did that, but we've released all the materials related to that.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Mr. Goldman.
Mr. Patel, does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's not a complicated question. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I didn't say it was a complicated question. My apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those three court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, so your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, and the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
I never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time, the overwhelming majority of that video is pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and child sexual abuse material. We will never release that.
Well, as you should not release the victims. But if there are videos that relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew, or photographs, that you have total control to release.
Yes, and if it exists.
And so why haven't you released it?
Why are you supposing that that is a fact when in fact it is false? Are you saying that
you're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we did pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years. And every single video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally brought.
I'm not asking about prosecutions. I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were involved in the sex ring that you promised to do before you became FBI director.
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm
children
not asking
on the
about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me. Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in sex rings.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our possession.
And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage. Okay, let's talk about the witness interviews. 302s of witness interviews. Those are not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional sealed order for a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names of the victims?
We are releasing as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to
How is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders work?
Actually,
Do you know how
Mr.
sealing
Patel,
orders
I was a
work?
prosecutor, a real prosecutor for how
So I was a
court
fake one?
orders. And I want to understand what the court order prevents you from releasing witness statements that the FBI took.
As a real prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the material is sealed unless
So
that
your
judge
testimony
waives
here
it.
is that all of those witness statements are under a court order, a protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
No, that's not my
Subpoena.
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order, are no longer under a protective order, why are they not being released?
How are they not under protective?
Why are you not going to the court like you did for the grand jury testimony to unseal those records?
The DOJ did go to the court.
No, not on those records. Why aren't you going? You just went on grand jury.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
You are hiding the Epstein files,
Time
Mr.
of the
Patel.
gentleman has expired.
You are part of the cover.
I respond.
You sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking is patently and categorically false, and the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they have requested to speak with you. Because the victims have requested and you are not responding to them.
Director, yes or no, is the FBI still spying meetings?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Catholics?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still spying on President Trump?
I don't believe so.
Is the FBI...
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans for shopping at Cabela's or purchasing Bibles?
Nobody is targeted for their faith.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans who are pro-life?
Nobody is targeting anyone for their beliefs.
Is the FBI still cooking the books on crime data?
The crime data is real.
Is the FBI still purging agents for conservative viewpoints?
No one at the FBI has asked their viewpoints on politics.
Is the FBI still labeling the Betsy Ross flag, the flag of the American Revolution, a hate symbol?
No.
Well, maybe that's why you've been able to, what was the number? 23,000 bad guys you've arrested, a huge increase from the same time period in the previous administration. I think you said 1,400 predators, 4,000 children rescued. Were those the facts?
4,700, 35% increase on children rescued.
Yeah. And you got the guy to Abbey Gate?
We got the Abbey Gate guy.
We had a guy from the 4th District of Ohio who lost his life there serving our country. We appreciate that. Maybe when you're not focused on politics, you can actually do what the FBI is supposed to do. Go get the bad guys, right?
That's what the men and women of the FBI do.
Director, did John Brennan lie to Congress? Let me just read a couple things actually before you answer that. 2 years ago, Brennan in for an interview, and I asked him, how'd you learn about the dossier in December of 2016? Mr. Brennan replied, I received a copy of it from the FBI, very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. That's what John Brennan told the United States Congress. 7 weeks ago, the Director of National Intelligence told us this. John Brennan lied and denied using the dossier in the intelligence community assessment because he knew it was discredited. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee Brennan refused to remove it, and when dossier's main flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? John Brennan lied to us?
Mr. Chairman, I won't stylize the evidence. What I will say is that the intelligence community assessment, those that created it and any individual involved with it, is an ongoing investigation.
There's an investigation into what took place in December and January of December 2016, January 2017, when this whole thing started, this grand conspiracy. That is being investigated, is that right?
That has been publicly announced by the department.
That's been announced by the department. Did Chris Wray hide documents from this committee?
You would know better than me, sir.
Well, I think you told us like 700 pieces of information you've given this committee since you've been the director relative to just one incident, the Catholic memorandum from the Richmond field office.
I can give you the comparison, sir. Yeah, the Catholic memo, I believe we turned over 750 documents. In Mr. Ray's tenure, I believe they turned over 19 pages.
19 pages. You've given us 700. Why would Chris Wray hide information from this committee?
You'd
have a hazard to guess?
Sorry?
Hazard to guess why he would do that?
I don't know, sir.
I think maybe it was because FBI was spying on a priest, trying to get him to break the priest penitent confidence that exists? You think maybe that was the reason?
You'd have to ask him, sir.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. I want to read a few names here. Arctic Haze, Tropic Vortex, Riding Hood, Foggy Falls, Echoes Fate, Sirens Lure, Genetic Christmas. What are these code names about, Director? You know?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, Arctic Haze, Tropic Vortex. My understanding, these are code names for leak investigations of classified information from the year 2017. Does that ring a bell?
In terms of leak investigations, many of those are ongoing, Mr. Chairman. But we are working with you to produce documents as we close those investigations or as we declassify them.
Let me ask you this question, because this is something about the way the FBI used to work. The way this whole thing so many of these things unfolded. Seems to me you had all these people in government leaking information that then gets reported in the press, and there's a story written about it, and then that article is then used to further the investigation and move forward with what they wanted. Did that take place back in 16 and 17?
That's the exact scenario that took place in the FISA application for Carter Page and the rest of the team.
Because that's what the CIA is supposed to do in foreign countries. It's not supposed to happen to Americans, but it did, didn't it, Director?
Yes.
Not just any Americans, it happened with the President of the United States. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you were the key guy in helping expose that. And I think our country will be forever grateful for what you did to let the country know that was going on involving Americans, which is not supposed to happen, and not just, again, any American, but the President of the United States. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned by reports that FBI agents have been diverted from their important work on crime and anti-terrorism to work on matters that are not critical to our safety. I'd like to play the video, the whole video
Jeffrey
clip.
Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
Well, but the Black Book, it's not just sitting there. I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on day one. Roll out the Black Book.
In contrast to that attitude of let it all out, we're getting reports of actions that are contrary to getting everything out, and that also involve diversions of FBI resources. For example, an FBI whistleblower reported that you were pressured by the Attorney General to place 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts to mine roughly 100 related records to redact President Trump's name from the files. Bloomberg reported this, that you directed FBI special agents from the New York and Washington field offices to join the Bureau's FOIA employees in Winchester and another building a few miles away, and that while reviewing the Epstein files, FBI personnel identified numerous references to Trump in the documents, and people familiar with the matter said that Trump's name, along with other high-profile individuals, was blacked out. Now, the New York Times reports, and this is a quote, Justice Department officials diverted hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors from their regular duties to go through the documents at least 4 times, including once to flag any references to Mr. Trump and other prominent figures. Details of the review were based on accounts by 3 former FBI and Justice Department officials who spoke on condition of anonymity because of fears of retaliation, and further that the FBI finished, after they finished its review of the files and materials, was sent to a team of Justice Department lawyers who double-checked the FBI's redactions and, quote, were instructed to flag any mentions of Mr. Trump and other celebrities. Now, I have 3 questions for you, Mr. Patel, about this. First, how many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? More than 1,000. Were the agents who were pulled from their duties to redact the president's name from the Epstein files working on criminal cases or child sex trafficking cases? And are the number of agents that have been reported diverted for these purposes, is that accurate?
No.
No what?
You asked if it was accurate. I said it wasn't.
So you're saying that none of this happened? That,
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
okay. How many times did President Numps appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has been
No, that's not
provided
the question.
to the
I
public.
asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
It's your testimony. You do not know that
The
answer.
number of times, no.
Could you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what they were working on?
When you say diverted, you make it seem as if agents were pulled off what they do all the time. Agents at the FBI masterfully do double duty and triple duty. And because of the public's interest in this case, we flexed resources to make sure that we could answer the public's signal demand. So do you want us to look through the material and provide it to you, or you do not want us to do that?
So it's
Which
your,
one is it?
it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter, that this was a top priority to go through this material to look for Mr. Trump's name. Is that your testimony? That's the highest priority for the FBI?
What's one of the most impressive things about the FBI leadership and the careers that are in place is that they make the decisions on who to send where on priorities and make sure that, and that's what happened here.
It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, we have national security threats, we have terrorism threats, we have murders such as that occurred, unfortunately, with Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that that's your highest priority, Chairman.
That's
I yield
literally
back.
not what I said.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Director, is President Trump implicated in any wrongdoing related to Jeffrey Epstein?
Based on the entirety of the evidence that we have, absolutely not.
The president is not implicated.
Correct.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about China's malign influence here in America. And, you know, we've seen spy balloons traverse the United States. We've seen police stations in communities around America. And sitting in the chair you're in just 2 years ago, there was a sheriff from Cochise County, Arizona, Mark Daniels, that was here, who said that the exponential increase in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into America is directly related to the open borders policies of the previous administration. Do you agree with Sheriff Daniels' characterization?
In large part, yes.
So, since you've been director, has there been a reduction with, I mean, we've talked about how the border is largely secure now, right?
The southern border, yes, sir.
The southern border is largely secure. Has there been a concomitant reduction or a reduction in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into America?
There has been a massive reduction to the tune of, we've seized more than 25% year-to-date this year than the prior year, and that's enough fentanyl to kill 120
Does that play a role in this fentanyl that's coming to America?
As I stated in my opening, sir, what they do and the companies in China, mainland China do, is produce the precursors and the cutting agents that they send ship overseas through various countries into the Mexican drug cartels who produce it. So they basically are the cooks in terms of the ingredients.
Tell us, what is the FBI doing to stop China from delivering death to America?
So for the first time in a decade, I actually reached out to my counterpart at the Ministry of Public Security. No one at the FBI had done so. To engage.
Ministry of Security, where's that?
In mainland China.
In mainland China, okay, thank you.
To engage in a conversation to say, hey, can we have a certain number of these precursor chemicals listed in China so that they become illegal and illegal to trade. We're also working with our counterparts in places like India and Guatemala because the transshipment routes of the precursors, the Mexican drug cartels have gotten creative, and instead of coming directly to America are going into these countries. And we've had massive success in India and Guatemala and in those governments' great partnerships in shutting down the ability to ship the precursors into those countries, which are ultimately destined to America.
So those people that are working with security agencies have been working with you, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
So I want to turn to a couple cases in Michigan where Chinese nationals on behalf of the Chinese government smuggled in illicit biological materials, stuff that can harm our agricultural industry. What actions are you taking as we see repeated stories of Chinese nationals doing this in the United States?
So just that, sir. In the This calendar year alone, as I was mentioning, our counterintelligence operations and cases brought against the Chinese, I think something like 40%. And specifically, the cases in Michigan show two threat streams, not just against our agricultural industry, which is a threat to national security, but they were also bringing in chemical agents in mushrooms. I'm not the exact expert. That would have ultimately hurt our population. We arrested and charged all of those individuals, and we were aggressively going after them in every single state because they weren't doing it in Michigan alone.
Should research universities across the United States be doing a thorough job of vetting Chinese nationals that are coming to their universities?
They should.
Turning to spying in America, you know, we heard the stories about Senator Dianne Feinstein's driver, who was a Chinese spy, son, who worked in Governor Hochul's office, Christine Fang in California. What are you doing to find these people who are Chinese spies that are trying to burrow themselves into the politics of America? Because we know it's happening, right?
Yes, it is. And what our counterintelligence unit is doing is aggressively seeking the individuals are working, then we are utilizing our operational authorities to go in and investigate them either through our human source networks and collecting information through lawful process, online, search warrants, and data so that we can bring proper arrest charges and publicize to the world what they're doing here. And just because we've caught a few doesn't mean we've caught everybody. We've got a lot more to go.
I get one more quick question in. The FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin, Hannah Dugan, for interfering with a federal law enforcement operation. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And is a judge above the law here in the United States of America?
Well, no one is, and that case is ongoing. But as you stated, and these allegations said there was an interference in a federal lawfully executed federal law enforcement priority that was interfered with.
Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Patel, I believe you had primary importance in starting Operation Viper in Memphis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Operation Viper brought in the FBI, the DEA, the ATF to help the Memphis police in policing the city.
That'll be phase 2, sir. Phase 1 was FBI and local law enforcement in Memphis for the last few months.
Okay. You did a good job, and the police director and the mayor have told me that has been helpful, the FBI working with the police. And the FBI are trained in law enforcement. They know Miranda rights, they know how to do policing, and they do a good job working with the police. Do you think that the National Guard is necessary to do the work that the FBI is doing now?
Thank you. I do think it's necessary to finish it. What we've done is 500 arrests in Memphis and 110 federal indictments, but we're a piece of where the criminal conduct is occurring in Memphis, and we can't work inside perimeters that are not established and safe, and DF and U.S. Marshals can go in. We can't be going into all these areas knowing that they're extremely volatile and jeopardizing the safety of our agents.
Did the National Guard do anything in Washington to help the FBI stay safe from these dangerous elements?
They established perimeters.
Established perimeter, and the criminals knew about it, so they...
It was a visible force, sir, so they kind of saw it.
Well, what you did, I commend you for what you did, and I think the FBI coming in, we have a crime problem in Memphis. The FBI has helped, DEA will help, and the ATF will help. I don't think the National Guard's going to help, and what I've seen, they're not trained in law enforcement, are they?
No, sir.
And so that could be a problem. Who will direct the National Guard in Memphis? Will it be, will they have control over your agents?
No, sir, they won't.
Who will have control over your agents? You?
Well, the SAC and then ultimately the chain of command up to Washington, D.C. will control the FBI, but there's a task force that was put together that is going to be led by an interagency. The heads of U.S. Marshals, DEA, and FBI will be working together with DHS collectively on this.
Have you visited Memphis before?
Yes, sir, I have.
So you know how good a city it is.
I love Memphis.
A lot of us do. And Memphis is a great city, great history, Civil Rights Museum. Might say something about slavery, but that was the history. It needs to be taught. Blues, Elvis. Beale Street, right, barbecue. And people should come. It's not a troubled city. We've got some crime, but it's not a troubled city. We're not troubled. We love our city, and we hope that the National Guard doesn't come in and cause people to have questions about Memphis because it's a city they should visit. Let me ask you this about, you said that the homicide rates are coming down to an all-time low?
In modern recorded U.S. history, yes, sir.
When does modern recorded history start?
I think the FBI, and I'll get back to you on this, has stats on that going back about 30 years, sir.
Okay, I was thinking back to Ozzie and Harriet, and I didn't think you could beat Ozzie and Harriet's time. Secondly, you mentioned the Epstein case. Did any of the women that were victims, and they came up here and had a press conference and all, did any of them contact your office and ask to give information?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
If they did, let me ask you first, is there a statute of limitations on sex crimes like that, with sex with a minor, rape?
The DOJ is the expert, but I do not believe there's a statute on that, limitations on that.
So if there's not a statute of limitations, should you not be interviewing those people who know who names and the places and give you that information? That seems like that's a treasure trove of information, and it's a serious, serious, serious number of crimes.
Sir, I couldn't agree with you more. We've been very public about asking individuals to come forward with new information, and we would run out every single lead on that.
Well, I'm sure the women will come forward, especially today, to be sure that they will get an opportunity, because that seems like something we ought to do. Mr. Driscoll, what was his reputation?
I can't comment on Mr. Driscoll's matter. It's an ongoing litigation.
Yeah, but his reputation you could tell us about.
I can't tell you about his reputation. His work has been laid out in that lawsuit.
How many of the FBI agents who worked on the January 6th case have been fired?
I don't have that number, sir.
Do you have a ballpark figure?
No, but I can tell you that individuals based on case assignments in the FBI that I have led have not been terminated for case assignments.
Back to Memphis, and you work with Kevin Kane in our Tourism Bureau.
He's great.
Thank you. And thank you for your work in Memphis.
Gentleman, yes, back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Nice.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6th story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." The second document is entitled, "What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections." The third document is from Fox, Digital Intelligence for Israel. It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007, and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays. Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer, worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congressman to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice of the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman
consent
yields back.
request.
Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from New York.
I ask unanimous consent to introduce an unsigned memorandum from July 7th, 2025 that says we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Gentleman from Georgia.
unanimous consent request. It's an article entitled DOJ Deletes Study Showing Domestic Terrorists Are Most Often Right-Wing.
Without objection.
Thank you.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, thank you for being here today. I want to first talk about the significant role that the FBI plays in combating the national security threats posed by our nation's greatest threat, our nation's greatest security threat, China and the Chinese Communist Party. It's a fact that China is America's most significant national security threat, isn't that correct?
I would say so, sir.
And you would agree with me that China wants to dominate the United States of America?
I think that's largely their plan.
And they want to dominate the world, both militarily and economically, isn't that correct?
I think so.
You've been FBI director for the last, 8 months?
7 months, yes.
7 months, and during that time, have you held any stock in any companies founded in China?
I don't believe so.
Well, you do own stock in a company known as Elite Depot, don't you?
Which one, sorry?
Elite Depot. You own stock.
I think that's, I'll have to get back to you. I think it's a firm and it's a company out of Singapore.
Okay, well, no, the company out of Singapore, which is owned by Elite Depot, is the Shein Company, which was founded in China, correct?
I That company operates out of Taiwan.
Well, they changed their headquarters from China back in 2022 to Singapore for tax purposes, but it's owned by a Chinese billionaire. I think his name is, and you own stock in the company that owns Shein.
Which I disclosed during my confirmation process.
You certainly did. And now, do you still hold that stock in that Chinese company?
Pursuant to the Department of Justice, who reviewed my material that was submitted during my confirmation process, I was able to hold certain stocks, and they made the decision.
You still hold the stocks that you have? You still hold on to these Chinese stocks, these stocks in this Chinese company?
I disagree that it's a Chinese company, but
data from American companies, and to me it seems inconsistent with your role as FBI director that you would own stock in a company that is based in a country that is the nation's premier national security threat. It's like you are putting your own financial security over the security of the nation.
I disagree with that characterization.
Well, I think the American people look at it like it's a classic situation of the fox guarding the hen house. If the FBI is charged with investigating espionage, economic espionage by companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and you are the director of the FBI, you've got a conflict of interest.
Sir, I would just show if there's any intimation that I'm against.
Why are you holding on to this stock?
It wasn't a decision I made.
And it's valued at up to $5 million as of when you last reported, correct? $5 million in stock?
No, I don't follow it.
You don't follow it, but you're still making money off of it.
I don't have any money off of anything.
Well,
what I have done...
Trump's trade policies directly impact the value of that Chinese stock. Won't you agree with that?
Policy. I'm not a trade expert.
Okay, all right.
But I want to tell you this.
Crazy on me today. Let me ask you this question. Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding pedophiles? Why are you protecting pedophiles?
That is maybe the most offensive thing you could say to me, given the numbers.
Well, you have not released
given the numbers
files
of pedophiles.
You are aware of the Epstein client list in the 18,000.
The gentleman has expired. The gentleman yields back.
Can he answer the question?
Can I just respond?
Of course, the gentleman can answer the question.
Since I took over the FBI, there's been a 33% increase.
Sir, all of that started under Christopher Wray.
Your time is done, but
no, it didn't.
The witness gets to answer the question, and then we'll go to our next
FBI director, sir. And you're coming in here trying to take credit for something that a previous director instituted and largely brought to conclusion.
I take no
think it's
credit.
been clear that the director has numbers are so much better than the previous director.
It's deceptive.
Patel, if you want to answer the question.
I take no credit